Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Mithral Brews. My name's Chris. Today we are going to look at some modules that I highly recommend to really improve some of your experience while running Foundry VTT. These modules have already been mentioned in a few of my videos, especially the ones in which I am doing how to create the subclass, and I use this module to show the examples of how some of the features are being identified as turned on, or the effects are running correctly on the actors in which we're testing the features around. And that is visual active effects. If we look over at the website on Foundry, the visual active effects module is created by Zell. You can find this developer on the Foundry Discord channel. Does a lot of help, has helped me a lot in terms of learning the different things I could do with macros and the development of different features. So take a look at some of the stuff they can do under their project source URL. You can look at some of their other projects they work on through that avenue. I'll share the link to this webpage in my description of this video. But essentially, visual active effects, you will see it enables all temporary effects, including status condition affecting your current token that will be displayed at the top right. So it's going to add a display of what's going on for the character that's a little more visual, easier to see, and easier to, I guess I would say, manipulate. This works on all versions of Foundry 10 through 13. Zell keeps it updated pretty regularly, so you don't have to worry about it going out of date. I think any major update, Zell's pretty quick at making the changes needed to work with the latest version of Foundry and the latest version of D&D 5e. If we look, there are also some information here about for developers if they want to use this and hook this into their own modules. But let's jump back over into Foundry and show you why you would want to use this module. Now we have a encounter here set up. We have a fighter, a cleric, a bard, and a few skeletons and a zombie. So we're going to add these individuals to combat. So as we go through the combat, monsters take their actions, they make their moves, etc. They might attack and all that. But we get to the fighter here. What does the fighter got going on? The fighter has an option to, of course, shove the skeleton over. Maybe he wants to make the skeleton drop prone first so that the cleric has a better chance to hit. Or for whatever reason, the fighter's made a decision to drop the skeleton prone. If the skeleton fails its strength save, of course, rolls a 2, and the fighter's shove is going to be a DC 13, right? The skeleton then would drop prone. You'd right click, you can select the effect and then assign the prone effect. Now the skeleton's prone. What does that mean? It puts a little icon here on the token that shows, that identifies prone. But what does prone actually mean? What are the effects of being prone? There's no real indication of what the effects of being prone are, so you typically would just have to remember prone gives a attacker advantage, or the prone creature gets disadvantage on their attacks. They have to expend half their movement to getting up. Those are the basics of it. I'm sure there's more. Or you could go and let's look it up. We go to Player's Handbook, click here, scroll all the way down to creature or the glossary, open up the glossary. When we look at the glossary, we got to go down to conditions and look up prone, and there's prone. And so there's the restricted movement, talks about spending half of your movement and your speed rounded down to right yourself. Your attacks have disadvantage, and attacks against you within the 5 feet, they have advantage and disadvantage if they are beyond that. So there's all the rules. You have to go through all that clicking. You have no information on how to do that. So that's one example of, without visual active effects, what it would look like to understand prone. If we go down to the skeleton, one of the most common spells, especially in the early levels, that a cleric might cast will be the bless spell. So the cleric here would select their allies, target those three, them including themselves, and then they would cast bless. So they're going to cast a spell. It's going to consume a slot. It's going to start concentration. So you see the concentration here, and then we would then apply the status effect to the tokens. Well, what does bless actually do? Well, we've been playing D&D for a while, and it's also right here in the chat that says it adds 1d4 to a target's attack rolls or saves. So we can see that on the character's effects. We can see right here, then we hover over it and it'll say exactly what it can do, and it reminds the player on their character sheet what it can do. Outside of that, there's nothing to really indicate what the effect of that is. Just like with the skeleton and another way to show on the skeleton, this tells you what prone effect does here. Concentration, if we go to the concentration, what is concentration effect? And then it says, hey, this is the spell you are concentrating on and what it does. So it doesn't really tell you much more about what concentration means, right? So we have concentrating on bless. This one's prone. That's it. That's really the way we are expected as with the core to manage effects and what they know. We have to use the character sheet or know by memory everything that's going on with each of the effects. And if you look at some creatures, sometimes there's multiple effects going on. They might have something that they place on themselves, things that are placed on them. The skeleton's prone and turned. There's a lot that could happen with a token. Another place you would see these effects are on the encounter tracker here. You can hover over and see what their effects are. So there's plenty of ways it indicates what the effects are on a token, but what do they actually do? A little bit more difficult. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the visual active effects module. We're going to enable that and see how that changes everything. We've reloaded everything. We've set up a combat again with the same group of actors in this combat. So the fighter, the cleric, the bard are in combat with a couple of undead, and the combat's been enabled and started. So what we're going to look at is how visual active effects, once enabled, will improve your understanding of what's going on the token. So on the fighter, if we click on that, first we will see that the fighter has the defense effect going and dwarven toughness. Now there's not much described on these. If we open up the character sheet, we will go to the effects. You will see they're here. These are on here from the player's handbook, so there's no descriptions to these passive effects. If we look at them, they don't have any kind of description on them. Probably an opportunity to create some kind of understanding so it's easy to figure out what do these effects actually mean. You could, of course, go to the feature that provides them, and you will see what dwarven toughness is and what the defense style is here, but the effects don't have any definition. But you can at least see what effects are on the token in a passive state, meaning they're just always there. There's no action that needs to be taken to enable these. They're just always on the token. So same thing, the fighter runs in. If the fighter was to knock the skeleton prone, the skeleton rolls a save against the fighter's strength. It now would roll prone, and the skeleton would fall prone here. And we put the prone condition on. And if we select the token, we now see the prone condition here. If we hover over this condition, you will now see what the prone condition does. So restricts movement and affects the attack. So without having to open up any other resource, you see what the effects of the prone is. Now with the cleric, if we move to the cleric's turn, and the cleric casts the same spell, so we're going to go back and we're going to cast bless. They're going to select their friendlies. They're going to cast Bless. And then we're going to apply it to each of the characters. So now the cleric, we can hover over concentration. It gives you the same information. What are they concentrating on? How long does concentration last? So 1 minute. The source is Bless. And then what does Bless do? This gives 1d4 on attack and save. So you see everything that's going on here. The difference is these are active effects while these are passive effects. So these are always on. Again, not anything that you need to do as a player or to keep track of as a player or DM. They're just on the token because of features like being a dwarf or being a cleric. These are effects that we have started. And if we look at the character sheet, they are temporary effects. So they're going to last only 60 seconds. The other part that we can do is when we have a skeleton. So the nice thing about the effects, so then the bard, you also see the effect that's on the bard. So we know that the bard gets this 1d4 because we see the effect on the bard. And just so to remind everybody just how it automatically works is if we go to inventory, bard attacks, you'll see the 1d4 is automatically applied. That's all done through the activity and the active effect that's being placed on it. That's content for another video, but just to remind everybody that that's how the active effect works, is it applies this condition that says add 1d4 to attacks or saves. Now, if we go to the skeleton, and if the skeleton, let's go to a different skeleton here. And this one were to run up and attack the cleric. And let's say that hits the cleric and they do damage. And if that was enough damage to cause, so we apply it to the cleric. And if that was enough to force the saving throw, so here's the saving throw for the concentration. If this were to fail, the easiest way to remove that concentration, rather than going onto the sheet, going to concentration, clicking on it and breaking concentration, or you can go to the spell, you'll see that they are concentrating away. You might not be able to see it on the video, but you'll see like a little, I guess, arrow going around concentration to let you know you're concentrating on that. You can also break concentration there. The other way that you can change it is to right click concentrating on Bless. This will delete it permanently from the character sheet. And you say yes. You do not want to right click and remove these because these are passive effects. Once you remove them, it will remove it from the character sheet and you will have to recreate those. The other thing that happened here was because of the damage, the cleric became bloodied and there's no effect. The subclass, cleric subclass, might have some effect at higher levels that determine or that are enabled once you go bloodied. So there might be some kind of thing that has to happen. But another thing that you can do with the effects, visual active effects, is hold the middle, click the middle button, and that will keep the screen open for you, versus if you hover over it and then move, it will go away. Middle button keeps it open for you. That is visual active effects. Now, here's the thing. Let's go back and let's heal the cleric up a little bit. Let's cast that spell. Again. Let's cast it. Select our allies. We have the different actors set up with Bless, and then we're going to go through the encounter. If we go through, you will see that there's a little clock on there. If we hover over it, you will see on the fighter here, there's 48 seconds left of Bless. That's all based on when the cleric casts the Bless spell, and so we're seeing 48 seconds. Each round is 6 seconds, so if we go through, it should last for 10 rounds. So we're around 8, 24 seconds. Actually, I think I went through a round already. 18 seconds, so we should have 3 more rounds, and it keeps going down. Now, this last round, you have 6 seconds. If we go to the cleric and we go through, it's the cleric's turn. This should be the last. At the end of this cleric's turn, it should remove bless, but it doesn't. Oh, sorry, we have 1 more round. There we go. So, that actually, I think because I did it on another actor's turn, it didn't do it right. But at the end of that round, essentially it expired the effect. So it just shows expired. 1d4 is expired. Now it does not change if they are expired. Let me take a look here. Let's to make sure I'm saying this right. You will see under the attack, it still has the 1d4, even though the effect is expired. So it doesn't actually remove the effect. So that's one thing to remember, is that at the end of that turn, if you're using just visual active effects, you would right click and have to remove it. At the end of, once it turns orange with that orange symbol on it, that'll get rid of it. So let's take a look at some of the things that you can do with visual active effects in terms of the settings, so that it is set up for you. I'm going to cast that. Let's do bless again, because the nice thing about bless is I can put on multiple tokens and just kind of show the experience across the different tokens. All right. Now, if we go to the settings, we're going to just close this out for now. And we configure the visual active effects. There's a couple things that you can do. So let's click on the cleric that has it set up. Now, let's take a look at the settings. And so we're going to go to configure UI. Configure UI really is just going to change the visualization of where these effects look like up in the top right corner. So you can change the size of the icons to really large, to really small. You can change the font size of the display. So if I middle click here, this here is set to a 16-point font. If we up it to 42, middle click, you will see, boom, it is 42-point font. I don't know if that's points, but I'm assuming that's what it is. And then if we did an offset, we can shove it down in case you have another active module just taking up the space up here and you want to push it down, or if you want to offset it to the left or to the right, or to the left, sorry. So moving it to the left of the charms, sidebar charms, or icons is what you can do. What I do like that the module developer did is they gave you the default, or allows you to hit a reset button to move it back to the default. The other effects are going to require me to reboot, so just be patient through this part. To get it to show the impact is going to require the reboot. So hide disabled effects. If they enabled, any disabled effects will not show up. So if something is not on the token, so to give you an example, we will actually pull out a barbarian. The barbarian, you will see, has an effect called rage. It is inactive. A way to activate the bard's rage, this is one thing to consider. If there's an inactive feature on a token, you can see it here. If you double left click, it will turn it on, or it'll turn it off, or you can remove it. But if I were to hide the disabled effect, because right now it's disabled, I'm going to hit save changes. We're going to let it reboot. You will see that the rage no longer shows up here. Sometimes you don't really need to see the disabled effects. That's going to be, again, a preference on the player or the GM, but turning off disabled effects kind of cleans up unnecessary information that maybe you don't really need to know all the time. Maybe because you have a macro like this one down here that enables the rage on and off without having to double click. The other one is hide passive effects. So these are all those passive effects that each of these tokens have. If we want to hide those, we will click this button. Let's save that. because again, we don't really need that visualization at all, especially on some of the ones that come from the player's handbook or this like the default like species or class features. We don't need to know that the dwarf here has dwarven toughness or dwarven or the divine order protector. That's not something that's going to impact gameplay without some automation. Divine, the poison resistance is already just built into the actor, and then divine protector is going to give you the dedicated battle. You dedicated yourself to sacred roles, so training in martial weapons and heavy armor. Again, that's not something that is going to impact the actor, so no need to show that. So that's what turning off the passive effects. And then lastly, you have allow player interaction. If unchecked, the non-GM user will not be able to toggle or delete effects directly in the panel. The last couple times I tested this did not make any changes. So if I left it unchecked, the players still have the option to delete or toggle the effects. If I checked it, it left it to delete or unchecked. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if this is working correctly, but it's not something I mess with. I want my players to be able to toggle effects on and off if they want. Someone like that's doing the rage effect, if they're doing it and they're not keeping track of their resources, that's a different discussion than worrying about whether it's working actively or not. The other thing is like if they're prone or they want to go, if they want to add, let's say, if they want to add dodging, right? And then at the beginning of the turn, they want to remove dodging by right-clicking and removing it. I want them to be able to take that action. So whether I have that checked or not, it doesn't matter, and I'm not too concerned with whether it's working correctly. That is visual active effects. Now, as we said, we went through and we had an issue where it did not expire the effect. It gave an orange button. For instance, this has an orange expired rage. Expiring effects means that you have to have some kind of module to tell Foundry to remove the effect at the point of expiration. So let's take a look at that module. That module is Time's Up. Time's Up is created by Tim Posney. They make a lot of really great automation effects. Most popular one that I know that they make is probably MIDI QOL. That is a popular one, but this is one that I use a lot because it works great with visual active effects. You can see other works of Tim's by going into the link here, or go look at the project that explains more of what Time's Up does. But essentially, it just removes active effects when their time is set up. So let's jump back and let's look at what that looks like. It does have a required dependency called libwrapper. Before we go into what this does, let's take a look at the settings real quick. Time's Up doesn't have a whole lot of settings that I mess with. You can enable it or disable it. You can set it to start when an effect is transferred. You can update the passive effects. I'll let you go through these. I leave it as is. I don't make any changes. I don't know what the benefit of any of the changes are, so I'm not going to go into what happens when you turn them on and off. So begin combat and then go to the cleric's turn, have them cast the bless spell. All right, so let's go through each round. This is should be the last round. The cleric is concentrating on it and go through. At the end of that round, because of the way I kept skipping the rounds, as you saw, it just removed it automatically. So it's not something I have to keep track of, and that would be any effect that has a timer set. So if we look at that spell, bless, if we look at the spell and the effects on it and the bless effects, it only is going to work if something like this is set up where there is a duration of rounds or seconds here. So that's what Time's Up does. Two modules that go hand in hand that will help keep track of some things automatically for you, plus give you visual notifications of what each of the effects do. I use this a lot, like I said, in my content creation of when I'm doing subclasses to test and make sure everything is working without having to dig into the character sheet to make sure that the application of the effects are being used. And I highly recommend that if you use this this module and you make your own content, that you do better and actually explain what the effects are, even if they're passive. It really is nice if this stuff is filled in on effects in case you put an effect on someone and you want to know what it does. So hopefully this is helpful. These are 2 great modules to be used. Let me know if there's any other modules that you use to kind of keep track of effects like that. Again, there are automation modules by Tim Posney, the creator of Time's Up, that do a lot more. I do not use them. Don't take offense to that. I just don't have the players that want to see that much automation. But I do know there are a lot of really cool automation modules out there. But these are 2 that I really like that help me out. Hopefully you found this useful. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. You will see content like this and others. Please let me know if there's something you would like to see. Like I said, other modules. If you have some content idea that you would like me to try out, let me know, and I'll try to make a video of it. Until then, may all your brews be tasty.